Chipped ham and football. That's what Pittsburgh does. Hey, everybody. Thanks for finding the show again on the Post-Gazette YouTube channel. I'm Brian Batko, one of the Steelers beat writers here at the Post-Gazette. And on this show, as always, we try to find new, different guests to give you some opinion, perspective, analysis on the Steelers. Sometimes we get former players. Sometimes we get future players. Sometimes we get other people in the Pittsburgh media here. And other times we take it national. That's what we're doing today. Going to have on Judy Battista from NFL Network. Big thanks to her for joining us and giving us a little bit of a 30,000-foot view of how she saw the Steelers' free agent moves. And as a programming note, Judy and I are recording this on Monday afternoon. So if the Steelers make their big quarterback move or find out that their big quarterback move is happening between now and when you hear this on Tuesday morning, well, I guess I'm sorry for the lack of content, but you all would be thanking me for reverse jinxing something into finally happening. So just wanted to get that out there. And as always, the show is brought to you by Pella. No better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than Pella. They can help you save on your energy costs year-round. Schedule your free in-home consultation with a local Pella windows and doors to find the right product for your home and your budget. Give them a call at 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. That's 866-593-1560. Thank you, Pella. We will be right back on the other side with NFL Network's Judy Battista. All right, and there's our guest for this week, Judy Battista, NFL.com and NFL Network. She always makes it out to the Steelers at some point in training camp every year, and then occasional games here and there throughout the season. How's it going, Judy?
Very good. Now that free agency is starting to quiet down, it's better.
I was going to say, isn't that first Monday at like the second week of free agency kind of a come down from just
Yes.
constant checking and your mind's racing with every move that's being made in that first wave?
Especially because I feel like there was so much activity even before the negotiating period. Like I feel like lots of teams did big extensions and trades and everything. So it just didn't start like last Monday. I feel like there was a good week or 10 days preceding that was bananas too. So we earned this one.
Absolutely. And you know what? I wasn't going to even bring this up, but you kind of just reminded me of it. You've been covering this league for a long time, inside and out, especially with kind of a big picture focus. Do we still need the 2-day negotiating period Monday? Like, can the czar of the NFL just swoop in and be like, guys, how about we just get rid of it and free agency just starts at noon or 4 on Monday or Wednesday, and we do away with the whole, I know they don't really want to call it the legal tampering period anymore, but
Right.
like, could we just lop that off the front, especially since we kind of know back channels are being back channeled anyway?
Right. Back channels are back channeling at
Yeah,
least from the combine and
right.
probably before that too, but that's where things are really going is at the combine. So listen, part of it is I think they wanted to have some structure to, tampering,
Yeah.
not tampering. But also it's also good for business, right? We're talking about free agency for weeks. So I don't think they mind the fact that, in the middle of hockey season and basketball season and the run up to the NCAA tournament, like the top headline is still the NFL.
Yeah, you get these checkpoints along the way of like, okay, the negotiating period opens Wednesday, new
Right.
league year begins, and yes, it's all
Right.
NFL all the time, and that's especially the case here in Pittsburgh, as we
Of
know,
course.
which is why we are talking Steelers year round on this show and others on the Post Gazette's channel. I'll ask you this, Judy. I mean, what do you make of what the Steelers have done so far? It's all, and you mentioned kind of the, even the moves that were being made the Sunday night before, and the Steelers trading for DK Metcalf, a big one. But I almost liken it to the Steelers were at a party and they were one of the first people to jump in the pool, and they did an unexpected jackknife cannonball. But then instead of being the life of the party, they kind of just swam over to the side and started sipping on their drink, waiting for someone or something else to happen.
But I like that analogy, first of all, and I may steal it.
Go ahead.
First of all, I like the DK Metcalf move a lot. It was clear at the end of last season that they needed more firepower. I mean, everybody needs as much firepower as you can possibly get in the AFC, but they clearly needed more than George Pickens. So I like that. He's obviously, I mean, you've seen him. He's just a beast, and he's a great deep ball receiver. So I like that move a lot. I can't wait to see him and George Pickens and whoever the quarterback is on the field together. I think that's great. I like the Darius Slay move. I like injecting a dose of veteran leadership there. He sort of emerged, he's obviously in the last few years of his career, but he sort of emerged as like a mentor type to the secondary with the Eagles. The Eagles have a very young secondary, very, very good young secondary. But he was not just a good player. He was also became a really good mentor for those guys. And so you probably expect that we'll see something like that happen in Pittsburgh as well. But listen, I mean, we all are in the business of grading free agency, and it's impossible to grade anything. It's incomplete right now, right? Until we know what the resolution is going to be with the quarterbacks, it's hard to say, did they swim over to the side and just let the party play out without them? Or, did they get the big, the big prize out of the whole thing? It's hard to say. They're not the only team that's in this sort of situation that doesn't have a quarterback and doesn't know when they're going to get a resolution there. So you just sort of sit there. Actually, on a quarterback note, I like bringing Mason Rudolph back, actually, because he played well for them when he had to. Clearly, Mike Tomlin trusted him, played him in a playoff game. So I like bringing him back. I just think that until we know an answer, whether it's going to be Aaron Rodgers or somebody else, it's hard to tell what this free agency is going to look like.
Yeah, the free agency grades are flying from your outlet and others, but it's almost like the Steelers are deferring the biggest question on the exam for any quarterback needy team. So assuming they do get some resolution at quarterback eventually, like you said, I mean, the DK trade in a vacuum, probably wise move by Omar Khan to right some of his errors from last year in addressing that room. Darius Slay, a stabilizing force for that Eagles secondary, and could potentially be the same here, even if it is his swan song in the NFL. So those moves, I mean, they make sense in a vacuum. I think they help this team or any team in a vacuum. But I mean, you said it at the beginning, Judy, you need a lot of firepower in the AFC, and specifically the AFC North, where Lamar Jackson's not going away. The Bengals made, the biggest headlines of free agency week 2, literally overnight, Sunday into Monday, with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I mean, does what the Steelers have done so far, does it move the meter for you? Does it make you look at this team any differently as they try to continue building back post Ben Roethlisberger and, staying in that same tier in their division and in their conference?
Well, I would say about them exactly what I would say about any other team. It's still really early. We all focus on the headline names in free agency, but we're only now starting the second wave of free agency. And that's where a lot of your roster comes from. And we haven't even gotten to the draft yet. So, I mean, do they need more? Yeah, everybody needs more. And you're right. The fact that the Bengals are bringing everybody that Joe Burrow wanted back.
Yeah.
Right.
Even Mike Gesicki.
Right. Even Mike Gesicki. Right. I mean, that has to send up a flare to everybody else in the division and everybody else in the conference. You need more of everything. You need offensive line. You lost some pieces on the offensive line. You need some offensive linemen too. But again, it's so early. We are all conditioned to pay attention to the big, start of free agency. And I just said well, it's nice that it's quieting down, but it's not. For the people who are actually assembling rosters, it's not really quieting down. They're still filling in the bulk of the rosters. We're just not paying as close attention because it's not the DK Metcalfs of the world and the Aaron Rodgers of the world. But they still have a long way to go. I would assume they will add more firepower at some point because again, you just need so much. There's still going to be, I would be surprised if they're still not going to be a run first offense, even if you have Aaron Rodgers. And you've taken care of that, it seems like. So I would just say, like, sit tight. Like, don't. We got lots of time before they have to put a product on the field.
Yeah, a lot of teams are, Steelers included, are continue to make those moves on the margins that shape their, their
Right.
draft plan, and obviously we'll see what those rosters look like coming out of April and into May, and then certainly into training camp. And I think there's still a lot of Steelers fans wondering, hey, could they draft a quarterback in the first round? Every year the draft has such a wide range of opinions on the QBs, and especially Shadur Sanders and Jackson Dart seem like those two polarizing guys this year. Does it almost maybe make sense to plan for the future a little bit more, knowing that the Ravens and Bengals kind of have their they have their roster set for the most part, with the heaviest hitters, I guess we should say. And do you view, Ravens or Bengals? I mean, can you see the balance of power shifting at all in the AFC North, or do you feel like those are still the two to beat, albeit the Bengals, coming off a weird non-playoff season when they're
Weird.
playing some of their best ball at the end, but a non-playoff season nonetheless?
I mean, do I see either of those teams declining? No, I don't. But you have we just have no idea how every season's going to play out. I would not have imagined that the Bengals would have Joe Burrow's best statistical season and Jamar Chase having a triple crown season and not make the playoffs,
Yeah.
right? So, like, all kinds of weird stuff happens when we get into injuries play a huge part in this. So, I mean, do I see them coming back to the pack? No, but we don't know what the Bengals are going to do on defense yet, right? I mean, they're trying to get a deal done with Trey Hendrickson, and that would certainly be a big thing. But they've changed defensive coordinators, right? The defense was not good last year, did not perform well last year. We still haven't seen, they've done some moves on defense, but we haven't really seen what that finished product is going to look like. We don't know if the defense is going to be markedly better. Certainly, you think the offense is going to be okay as long as Burrow is healthy, as he was last year. The Ravens' offense was awesome last year. Again, no, I don't see them coming back to the pack, but every year we see things that surprise us, right? Like, none of us saw the Washington Commanders coming on as fast as they did last season. So every year something happens. We don't know who the Cleveland Browns are going to draft, and what's going to happen there. So there's a lot of movement. Having said that, I think one thing you can count on is, like, that the Steelers never bottom out, right? I mean, they are always in the mix.
Do you think
Which
they
is
should? I mean, do you think there's
right. I mean, I've
a
heard that argument,
reasonable?
right?
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think
Right?
there's a reasonable case to make that, like, and I
No,
think it's difficult to thread that needle when you do have Mike Tomlin, who
right,
in
no,
year 18, he's even admitted he's seen more football in the league than he's going to see at this point. Not that he's an old man, but he's not as young as he once was. Like, he just doesn't seem like he's ever going to be willing to kind of go that route, and neither is the tip
yeah,
top of this organization. They always
no,
want to be competitive, knocking on that door, because I think in their minds, every year that you get to the playoffs is a chance to
it's a
advance in the
chance.
playoffs. They just haven't done it.
That's correct. I mean, but every time you get in to the postseason, you have a chance because, again, you have no idea what's going to happen. So, no, I can't imagine that they, either the Rooneys or Mike Tomlin, would ever say, like, yeah, you know what, let's just go all the way down, and so we can get a hydra. I can't imagine that. We're having that same conversation here in New York with the Giants, right? Where, like, everybody says, like, just tank the last few games so you get the first pick. They were in line to have the first overall pick, and then they win a late season meaningless game, and now they're, that's just not the culture of those teams. I mean, those owners are never going to sign off on, yeah, let's tank for a draft pick. So, just to go back to what I would expect for next season, I mean, I would expect the Steelers to be in the mix to win the division, just like they seem to always be. And it's going to come down to a handful of those games in the division. And, you know, they have historically given Lamar trouble. Um, you just, it's hard for me to say that they would ever be out of it. Let's put it that way.
Do you think Russell Wilson will end up with the Giants at this point, Judy? It'd be very kind of it'd be nice symmetry if Justin Fields goes to the Jets and Russell Wilson
Right.
goes to the Giants, the Steelers quarterback room from 2024, for better or worse. What's the latest that you're hearing on on Russ, because I sort of wonder, I mean, we know Russ is the ultimate competitor, even if his body isn't quite physically as capable as it once was, and being that playmaker, let Russ cook type of guy. I can't imagine him settling into that role of, okay, I'm now sort of the backup mentor type for younger quarterbacks in this league.
Well, he's one of their contingency plans for the Giants, right? He is plan B. Obviously, they are waiting on Aaron Rodgers too, right? It's Monday afternoon as we're
Yeah.
taping this, so who knows? But they're waiting for Aaron Rodgers, and he is one of the people that they would turn to. I think he is probably, if Rodgers is plan A, then he would be plan B. But they've had meetings with Joe Flacco. They're going to meet with Jameis Winston. I mean, they are, they're looking around. They're doing their due diligence on what happens if they do not land Aaron Rodgers. I would expect that if they don't get Rodgers, that they would turn to Russell Wilson. But the Cleveland Browns met with him too, and that's actually right. The most straightforward situation for Russ right now is the Browns, not waiting on anybody else to make a decision, because we don't know how much longer they're going to have to wait for Aaron Rodgers. I mean, there's no deadline that's forcing the issue right now. So, if you're Russell Wilson, or at some point, do you say, like, you know what, I just want to go with the team that just wants me over here? Like, why am I waiting for somebody else to make a decision? So, but I would think that the Giants will turn to him if they don't get Rodgers.
We have historical precedent of Russell Wilson choosing a Rust Belt city with Kenny Pickett as the number one quarterback on their depth chart and one of the best edge rushers in football. So we at least know he could be intrigued by the broad outlines of such a situation in the AFC North too.
It's just such an odd, it's such an odd situation, because it's taking so long, and it's sort of awkward, right? I mean, like Russell Wilson, like the fact that he is sitting there, like all of these teams, waiting for one person, and then all of these other dominoes will fall. It's just it's strange, and it's taken so long. So every day gets sort of stranger.
Yeah, and you have the teams involved, like the Steelers and the Giants, and we haven't mentioned the Vikings yet, who seems like it's tough for people to get a read on them, whether in Minneapolis or outside of Minneapolis, to really know what they're thinking. But they have their own delicate part of this dilemma to deal with too, and JJ McCarthy. So they need to be careful not to really tip their hand one way or the other in their involvement or lack thereof. So, Judy, I'll leave you with this. I know if not to like kind of take away some of your best insight, if you did have any inkling of what the complicated fella Aaron Rodgers is thinking, I'm sure we would all watch that on the Insiders. But do you want to, like we said, March 17th, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, make a most updated dart thrower prediction on how this all plays out, whether it's Pittsburgh, East Rutherford, Minnesota, or the shores of Malibu, I guess, if retirement is indeed an option.
Which, by the way, looked great in those photos, right?
Yeah,
like Malibu would be my choice, definitely.
Come get hit by 300-pounders in the pocket, or enjoy the waves whenever I please. But
I'll just say this: I can't predict what he's going to decide or when he's going to decide. I will say I would be shocked if he retires, because I can't imagine a guy as competitive and as successful, who has played at such a ridiculously high level for so long, like Aaron Rodgers, would want it all to end the way it ended at the
with
Jets.
The Jets telling him thanks, but no thanks.
Right. Yeah. And just like two just crushingly disappointing seasons, especially because physically, I mean, he's not, Aaron Rodgers when he was 26 years old, but he can physically still do it. Like we saw flashes of that last year. So I would be really surprised if he retired. But he's obviously a different kind of guy who thinks differently and thinks very deliberately. So who knows?
Yes, and he is quite literally on the record as saying he has at times needed a darkness retreat to make his major NFL career decisions. So, I mean, I've gone back and watched some of those late season Jets games myself since this whole dalliance with the Steelers began. And I mean, he can still, I think, move around better than some Steelers fans might assume at age 41. And, he can still sling it. We know he's turnover averse, so he might not air it out quite as much as Russell Wilson. But I think with the way last season ended here in Pittsburgh for Russ, that might be a feature, not a bug for the Steelers coaches. It just doesn't quite line up with the whole DK Metcalf, George Pickens, toolkit on the outside if Pickens does indeed stay on this roster. So as the quarterback world turns for the Steelers and Rodgers at this point, I would say never a dull moment, but I guess there have been a lot of dull moments since last morning to midweek. We just never stopped talking about it. This is not dull. I mean, the fact that we're still talking about this a full week in and like two of the most storied franchises in the NFL don't have quarterbacks, and we're all talking about this. Like, again, the NFL marketing people could not have drawn this up better. Yeah, I just remember like at the end of Ben Roethlisberger's career, I know a lot of Steelers fans will still say, we're kind of in this predicament because Ben stayed too long. But I just remember thinking there's no way he's going to walk away after getting blown out by the Browns of all teams in a playoff game. He can't go out like that. And it didn't end a whole lot better the next year against the Chiefs in Kansas City, but at least it wasn't sitting on the bench in an empty Acrisure Stadium after losing to that team of all teams. So I wonder, that's a good point by you. If Aaron Rodgers is going to be, well, Mike Tomlin famously said of Russell Wilson last year, he doesn't want to say he's hungry because hunger can be satisfied. He's driven. Well, maybe Mike will recycle that same line if Aaron Rodgers comes here. But I remember thinking he'd go to the Jets and, play out of his mind to make the Packers look bad. And we didn't quite get that result.
I thought that too. I mean, obviously the first season, the injury was just devastating. But even last year, there were more things that were wrong with the team than just Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, there were certainly periods where he was not playing well, but the whole team wasn't playing well. So I still think there's that part of him in there that wants to prove like, I was not what you saw. That was not me. And that's not how I want my career to end. And certainly, I mean, the Steelers obviously have plenty of things to put around him, right? I mean, they've got weapons, they've got a running game, they've got a defense, like they've obviously got a spectacular head coach. I mean, they've got a lot that would be attractive to a, late career quarterback who, again, like sort of like Ben, right? Like, I mean, very few get to hold up the Lombardi trophy and walk off into the sunset. That just does not happen.
Even Tom Brady did not.
Yeah. No, even Tom Brady did not, right? It just doesn't happen that often. But at least if you get to the playoffs, win a playoff game, make a representative showing, that's a better way. And I wouldn't be sure that Aaron Rodgers only wants to play one more season, by the way. I would think if his body feels good and he holds up, that he would probably want to keep going.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point to end on. Well, thanks so much, Judy Battista from NFL.com and NFL Network. Anything else you want to promote before I get you out of here?
No, watch The Insiders at 7:00 Eastern.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks, Judy. I appreciate you coming on and taking some time for us. I'm sure we'll see you either this summer or 2025 season somewhere with the Steelers. All right.
My pleasure. Hope to be in Latrobe.
Sounds good. Thanks. See you, Judy. All right. There goes Judy Battista. Appreciate her coming on the show today to talk more of the NFL quarterback storyline gift that keeps on giving, of course, with the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers, Vikings, Giants. Who knows how it's going to play out, but make sure to stay tuned to postgazette.com and the channel here. We will have more shows, more stories, more updates for you as this saga continues. What else can we call it? Quick message from Goldberg, Persky, and White before we get out of here. If you were diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys from Goldberg, Persky, and White. For more than 40 years, their firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. I'm Brian Batko. Appreciate you watching the show. We'll be back with a bunch more North Shore drives and chats, mailbags, film studies throughout the rest of the week. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your week 2 of free agency. And of course, draft talk will be ramping up here as well on the Post-Gazette YouTube channel.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.